This story is titled, "During our family dinner, my fiancée grabbed her phone, started recording video, and began threatening everyone at the table." Hey everyone, I had spent months preparing for this moment, and everything was absolutely perfect. The engagement party was exactly what Connor and I had dreamed of. Fairy lights twinkling throughout the garden like captured stars, wine flowing freely among our guests, and Connor's warm hand in mine as we moved through the crowd, greeting everyone who had come to celebrate our love. Even Connor's mother, who was usually critical of everything from the flower arrangements to the catering choices, had managed to genuinely smile tonight. She actually went out of her way to compliment the arrangements I had worked so hard to perfect. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this would all go smoothly. But deep down, I knew Victoria would try something. Connor's sister had been vehemently against our relationship from the very first day he brought me home to meet the family. She never missed an opportunity to make snide, cutting comments about how I wasn't strong enough. Not strong enough to handle their family's elevated social position. Not strong enough to navigate the complex world of old money and established connections. As if being a high school biology teacher somehow made me fundamentally inferior to their old money status and generations of inherited wealth. I had overheard her telling Connor once, her voice dripping with disdain, "Maya's too simple for our circle. She'll never fit in with people like us." But Connor loved me anyway, despite all the pressure from his family. He had proposed to me in my classroom after school, getting down on one knee among student artwork and science projects scattered across my desk. It was absolutely perfect, precisely because it was so authentically us. Genuine, unpretentious, and completely real in a way that their world of appearances and expectations could never be. The party was in full swing, with laughter and conversation filling the warm evening air, when Victoria suddenly clinked her wine glass with her ring, demanding everyone's attention. She looked absolutely stunning, of course. Her designer dress probably cost more than my entire yearly salary as a teacher. But there was something unmistakably mean and calculating in her smile as she confidently took the microphone from the DJ. "I'd like to say something about the happy couple," she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the garden while every conversation died down. Beside me, I felt Connor's entire body tense up. He knew his sister far too well, and he could sense what was coming. "My brother has always had such interesting taste in women." Victoria paused dramatically for effect, her eyes scanning the crowd of guests like a predator surveying her territory. "But Maya here, well, she's certainly different from what we all expected for someone in our family." I felt Connor start to rise from his chair, probably to intervene, but I squeezed his hand firmly and silently mouthed, "Wait." I wanted to see exactly how far she was willing to take this public humiliation. "I give it 6 months," Victoria continued, her smile as sharp and cutting as broken glass. "He's too weak for her, always following her around like some kind of lost puppy. Our family needs strong partnerships, marriages that enhance our social standing, not whatever this pathetic situation is supposed to be." The garden fell into an uncomfortable, deafening silence. I could feel everyone's eyes burning into us. Connor's society friends with their perfectly pressed clothes and inherited jewelry, his parents' business associates who controlled half the city's real estate, and my small group of fellow teacher colleagues who suddenly looked extremely uncomfortable and out of place in this world of wealth and social warfare. But I wasn't worried, not even slightly, because Victoria had forgotten something crucially important in her rush to humiliate me. I had been a high school teacher for 6 years, dealing with teenage bullies, entitled parents, and every form of manipulation imaginable. I knew exactly how to handle bullies like her. And more importantly, I knew her secret, the one she thought was buried so deep that no one would ever find it or dare to use it against her. I stood up slowly and deliberately, smoothing down my dress with calm, measured movements. It wasn't designer like hers, but it was elegant and sophisticated in its simplicity, just like me. "Actually, Victoria," I said, my voice clear, calm, and carrying perfectly across the now silent garden, "I'd like to respond to that touching toast of yours." Connor looked at me with genuine concern and worry in his eyes, probably wondering what I was planning to do. His sister smirked confidently, probably expecting tears, stammered excuses, or maybe a humiliated retreat from the party. She had absolutely no idea what was about to hit her. Sometimes the quietest, most underestimated people have the most devastating ammunition at their disposal. And Victoria was about to learn the hard way that simple didn't mean stupid, and that teachers know how to do their research. I held the microphone in my hand, feeling its weight like a weapon that could either destroy or defend. For a brief moment, I actually considered taking the high road, smiling graciously, making a self-deprecating joke, and keeping her terrible secret buried where it belonged. But Victoria wasn't finished with her assault on my character and dignity. "Look at her," she sneered, grabbing a second microphone from the DJ setup with the confidence of someone who believed she held all the power. Standing there in her little department store dress, pretending she actually belongs in our world. "Tell them, Maya," she continued, her voice rising with cruel enthusiasm. "Tell them how you're systematically changing my brother. How he barely visits the country club anymore because you've convinced him it's beneath him. How he's actually talking about teaching part-time at your little public school instead of focusing on his real career." Connor stood up abruptly, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Victoria, that's enough. Stop this right now." "No, it's not nearly enough." Victoria's voice rose to an almost hysterical pitch as she lost control of her composure. "She's turning you into one of them, Connor. One of these ordinary, mediocre people with their ordinary, mediocre lives. Next thing we know, you'll be shopping at Target and driving a Honda instead of maintaining the standards our family has worked generations to establish." Nervous, uncomfortable laughter rippled through the crowd of guests. I saw my fellow teachers shifting awkwardly in their chairs, clearly wishing they could disappear from this increasingly hostile environment. "At least I know who I am," I said quietly, but my voice carried clearly in the tense silence. "At least I don't hide behind designer dresses and family money to cover up my deepest shame and guilt." Victoria's face immediately flushed a deep red, and I could see the first crack in her confident facade. "What did you just say to me?" she demanded, her voice shaking slightly. "I was trying to be kind, Victoria. I was trying to keep your secret buried where you obviously wanted it to stay," I replied calmly, maintaining perfect control over my emotions. "But you just can't help yourself, can you? You can't resist the urge to tear other people down to make yourself feel better about what you've done." "You don't know anything about me," Victoria shot back, but I could hear the wavering uncertainty in her voice now. The supreme confidence she'd displayed just moments ago was cracking like thin ice. "Don't I?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. "What about the Palmer estate party last spring? You remember that night, don't you, Victoria? The one where you got blackout drunk and woke up in Jason's guest house the next morning?" The color completely drained from Victoria's face as if someone had pulled a plug. "Shut up," she whispered, but her voice had lost all its power. "Your best friend's husband, Victoria," I continued relentlessly, knowing I had crossed the point of no return. "The man you'd known since childhood. The man you trusted completely. The man who took advantage of you when you were unconscious and vulnerable." "Shut up," Victoria screamed, but I couldn't stop now. The truth was pouring out like water through a broken dam. "The pregnancy test you bought at that pharmacy 3 towns over, where you thought no one would recognize you," I said, my voice steady and clear. "The private clinic in Austria where you went to handle the situation. You came back telling everyone it was a ski trip, but we all know there wasn't any snow in April, don't we?" Victoria was trembling now, tears starting to stream down her perfectly made-up face. "You evil," she started to say. "Just like we know why you can't look Jason's wife in the eye anymore," I pressed on. "Why you switched country clubs suddenly. Why you only drink water at parties now instead of the champagne you used to love." The garden was completely dead silent now. Someone in the crowd dropped their wine glass, and the sound of it shattering on the stone patio seemed to echo forever in the stunned quiet. "You evil—" Victoria was crying openly now, her mascara running down her cheeks into dark streaks, completely destroying her perfect appearance. "You had no right to tell anyone about— like you had no right to judge my relationship, my career, or my worth as a human being," I interrupted, my voice now steel-hard and unforgiving. "You stand there in your $1,000 dress calling my fiancé weak and mocking my life while carrying that kind of guilt and trauma. How dare you? It wasn't— You don't understand what happened?" Victoria's legs suddenly gave out completely, and she collapsed into the nearest chair like a marionette whose strings had been cut. "Like you had no right to judge my relationship, my career, or my worth as a human being," I said, my voice now cold as winter steel. "You stand there in your $1,000 dress calling my fiancé weak and pathetic, mocking my entire life and everything I've worked for, while carrying that kind of devastating secret." "He was supposed to be my friend," Victoria suddenly whispered, her voice breaking completely. I trusted him completely, and he—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Connor's mother had her hand pressed over her mouth in shock and horror. His father stood frozen, his face completely ashen, as the full implications of what I'd revealed sank in. And Connor just looked profoundly sad as he watched his sister's complete emotional breakdown. "Get out!" Victoria suddenly screamed at me through her tears, her voice raw and desperate. "Get out of my family. You're destroying everything, absolutely everything we've built." "No, Victoria," I said softly, feeling some of my anger fade as I saw the broken woman before me. "You did that yourself with every snide comment, every cruel joke, every moment you tried to tear us down just to build yourself up. I just revealed the truth you've been drowning in designer labels and family money." She ran from the garden sobbing uncontrollably, her perfect hair coming completely undone, her expensive heels sinking into the soft grass and nearly causing her to stumble. The silence that followed her dramatic exit was absolutely deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that garden full of shocked guests. Then, unexpectedly, Connor's mother walked directly over to me and pulled me into a tight, warm hug. "We wondered," she whispered in my ear, her voice trembling with emotion. When she suddenly changed country clubs out of nowhere, when she stopped going to the Palmer family events completely, when she became so different and withdrawn. We knew something terrible was wrong, but she wouldn't tell us anything no matter how much we tried to help her. I hugged her back tightly, feeling all the fight and adrenaline slowly drain out of my body. I hadn't wanted to tell Victoria's secret, hadn't wanted to expose something so deeply painful and traumatic. But she had pushed and pushed relentlessly until there was nowhere left to go except straight to the devastating truth. Unfortunately, the moment of stunned silence and unexpected support after Victoria's humiliating exit didn't last very long at all. Robert Sterling Sr. suddenly slammed his champagne glass down on the nearest table so hard that it completely shattered, sending crystal shards flying across the white tablecloth. "How dare you!" His voice thundered across the garden with such force that several guests actually stepped backward. "How dare you bring this disgusting filth to our family gathering, to what was supposed to be a celebration?" "Dad!" Connor started to intervene, but his father cut him off immediately with a sharp gesture. "No, absolutely not." Robert's face was turning an alarming shade of red as his anger built. "First, you bring this high school teacher into our established social circle where she clearly doesn't belong. And now she's airing our most private family matters in public, destroying your sister's reputation and our family's good name." I felt Connor's hand tighten protectively around mine as his father advanced toward us with menacing steps. The remaining guests were watching this family drama unfold with a mixture of fascination and horror. "Your sister might be troubled and dealing with serious issues, but at least she comes from the right background, the right breeding," Robert continued, his voice dripping with class-based contempt. "But you," he pointed directly at me, his face now completely red with rage. "You're nothing but a social climber who just proved beyond any doubt that she doesn't belong in our world." "What's next?" he demanded, his voice rising to near-shouting levels. "Are you going to run back and tell all your little teacher friends about our family's private business? Gossip about us in your public school faculty lounge?" "That's enough," Connor shouted, finally finding his voice and stepping protectively in front of me. But his father was far from finished with his tirade. "Enough? It was enough when you started dating beneath your station in the first place." Robert's voice was now ice-cold and calculated, which was somehow more frightening than his shouting. "It was enough when you proposed to her without even discussing a prenuptial agreement with the family lawyers. But this display of common trash exposing our most sensitive family secrets at what was supposed to be a celebration of love, this is absolutely unforgivable." I could see guests hurriedly gathering their belongings and making hasty, uncomfortable exits from what had turned into a family war zone. My fellow teacher friends looked absolutely horrified by the raw display of wealth-based prejudice they were witnessing. One of them caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm so sorry," as they quickly left. "We're leaving right now," Connor announced firmly, pulling me toward the garden exit with determined steps. "This ends here." "Yes, run away," his father called after us mockingly, his voice carrying across the rapidly emptying garden. "Run away with your little gold digger and see how far you get without the Sterling family name behind you." The drive home was completely silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional sound of traffic. Connor's knuckles were stark white against the steering wheel as he gripped it with desperate intensity. I wanted desperately to apologize, to explain my actions, to say something that would make this nightmare better. But no words seemed adequate for what had just happened. Then his phone began ringing with an ominous tone that cut through the heavy silence. Connor glanced at the caller ID and his face went even paler than before. "It's Dad," he said quietly, his voice filled with dread. He reluctantly put the call on speaker, and immediately his father's voice filled the car. Cold, controlled, and infinitely more dangerous than his earlier shouting had been. "You have a choice to make, Connor." Robert's voice was eerily calm now, which somehow made it far more threatening. Either you end this ridiculous engagement immediately and find someone suitable from our social circle, or you're completely cut off from this family. Connor's face went absolutely pale as the full weight of the threat hit him. Dad, you can't possibly— I can, and I absolutely will, his father interrupted with chilling certainty. No inheritance, no trust fund, no family connections, no business relationships, nothing. Your mother and I have already spoken to the family lawyers about updating all the legal documents. The silence in the car was deafening as we both processed what he was saying. Connor pulled the car over to the side of the road, his hands shaking uncontrollably. You have until tomorrow morning to make your decision, Robert continued relentlessly. And know this, Connor. If you choose her over your family, we will use every connection, every resource, every ounce of influence we have built over generations to make absolutely certain this marriage fails. That's illegal, I whispered, barely finding my voice. Oh, sweetheart, his father's voice dripped with condescending contempt. You have absolutely no idea what money and power can accomplish when properly applied. Ask yourself this question, Maya. Is he really worth Connor losing everything he's ever known? Is he worth him becoming nothing more than a nobody? The call ended abruptly, leaving us sitting in stunned silence on the side of the road. Connor pulled the car over completely and turned off the engine, his hands still trembling uncontrollably from the shock of his father's ultimatum. He means it, Connor said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. He'll actually do it. He'll destroy us. Destroy everything I've ever known or worked for. Everything I've been trained for since childhood. He'll take it all away in a heartbeat. And he won't stop there, Connor continued, his voice breaking with the weight of realization. He'll go after your career, your future, your ability to work anywhere. God, Maya, he'll make absolutely sure you never teach again if we go through with this marriage. I watched helplessly as the man I loved completely crumbled under the enormous weight of his father's threats. The strong, independent man who had confidently proposed to me in my classroom, surrounded by student projects and the life we had built together, now looked utterly lost and trapped between love and the golden cage he had been raised in. What are we going to do? I asked softly, reaching for his hand. Connor stared out the windshield for a long moment, tears visible in his eyes as the full implications of his father's ultimatum sank in. I don't know, he finally whispered. For the first time in my entire life, I really don't know what we're supposed to do. We ended up at my small apartment that night, sitting together on my second-hand couch that Connor's family would probably consider furniture suitable only for servants. He hadn't spoken a single word for the last hour, just staring at his phone as an endless stream of messages from his mother and Victoria poured in with increasing urgency and venom. They're all calling me weak, he finally said, his voice completely hollow and defeated. Saying I'm letting you control me, that I'm allowing you to systematically destroy the family name and everything our ancestors built. He showed me his phone screen, and I could see the stream of increasingly hostile messages. Victoria had sent a particularly vicious text that made my stomach turn. This is exactly what I meant. She's ruining everything, and you're too weak to stop her. I took his hand gently in mine, trying to ground him in the present moment. What do you think? I asked softly. I think— He stood up abruptly, pacing around my small living room like a caged animal. I think I'm absolutely terrified of what's happening to us. Do you have any idea what it actually means to be a Sterling? He continued, his voice filled with anguish. The constant expectations, the crushing pressure, the never-ending scrutiny from everyone in our social circle. One single mistake and you become gossip at every country club in 3 states. And marrying me would be that mistake? I asked, my voice cracking slightly despite my attempts to stay strong. No, God, no. He immediately knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. Marrying you would be the only genuinely real thing I've ever done in my entire life. But Maya, they'll systematically destroy us both. Dad wasn't bluffing about any of it. One phone call to the right people and your teaching career is completely over, he continued, his voice breaking with the weight of what we were facing. One carefully placed word to the right connections, and I'll never work in marketing or any respectable field again. So what are you saying exactly? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. I'm saying— His voice broke completely. I'm saying maybe Victoria was right about me all along. Maybe I really am too weak for this fight. Too weak to protect you from them, he whispered. Too weak to start completely over with nothing. To build a life from scratch without any of the advantages I've always taken for granted. I felt my heart splitting in two as I watched the man I loved doubt everything we had built together. Connor, look at me, I said firmly. When you proposed in my classroom surrounded by science projects and crayon drawings, what did you tell me? That I loved how real you were, he whispered, his eyes filling with tears. That you made me feel like myself, not just another sterling heir going through the motions. And now, he stood up again, running his hands through his hair in complete frustration. And now, I'm supposed to choose between the woman I love more than anything and everything I've ever known. My whole life, my future, my family, my entire identity. No, I said quietly but firmly, standing up to face him directly. You're not supposed to choose between me and your family. You're supposed to choose who you want to be as a person. The man who proposed in a classroom because it was real and authentic, I continued, stepping closer to him. Or the man who lets his father dictate his entire life because it's easier than fighting for what he believes in. His phone buzzed again with another message, this time from his father. Connor glanced at it, and his face went even paler. The lawyers are waiting for your decision, he read aloud. Don't throw away your birthright for a temporary infatuation that will never last. Connor stared at the message for a long, agonizing moment, then slowly and deliberately turned off his phone completely. You know what the absolute worst part is? He said, sitting back down beside me on the couch. When Victoria made that toast tonight, when she called me weak in front of everyone we know, part of me actually believed her. Because I spent my entire life trying to be exactly what they wanted, he continued, his voice filled with self-doubt. The perfect son, the proper heir, the man who puts family reputation above absolutely everything else, including his own happiness. And now, I'm terrified of losing everything I've always known, he admitted. But I'm even more terrified of losing you and becoming the kind of person I hate. I'm terrified of turning into my father, he whispered. Of becoming like Victoria, living a life where appearances matter more than truth, where money matters more than love. He took my hands in his, looking directly into my eyes. Whatever you decide to do, I said, squeezing his hands tightly, I need you to be absolutely sure about it. Because if we do this, if we stand up to them and fight this battle, it's going to be all-out war. And I need to know that you won't break under their pressure, I continued. That you won't wake up one day and regret choosing me over the comfortable life you've always known. He was quiet for a long moment, looking around my small apartment with fresh eyes, at the student artwork hanging on my walls, at the stack of papers I still needed to grade sitting on my kitchen table, at the simple life I lived without family millions or social status. I don't want to be weak anymore, he finally said, his voice gaining strength and conviction. I want to be the man who chooses love over money, who chooses truth over appearance, who chooses you over them, no matter what it costs. Even if it costs you everything you've ever known? I asked, needing to be absolutely certain he understood the magnitude of what he was saying. He pulled me close against him, holding me tightly as if I might disappear. They can take the money, the connections, the sterling name, and everything that comes with it, he said firmly. But they can't take this. They can't take what we have together, what we've built, what we mean to each other. As we held each other tightly on my shabby, second-hand couch, his phone kept buzzing insistently on the coffee table with increasingly desperate messages, but we both ignored it completely. Tomorrow would bring all-out war with his family and everything that entailed. But tonight we had each other. And maybe that kind of love and commitment was strength enough to face whatever they threw at us. Robert Sterling Sr. didn't waste any time making good on his threats. Within just 1 week, the principal at my school regretfully informed me that my contract wouldn't be renewed for the following year due to budget constraints that everyone knew were really about pressure from influential donors. Connor's marketing firm suddenly found mysterious irregularities in his work that required a thorough investigation, effectively putting his career on hold indefinitely. Our rental application for a new apartment was mysteriously rejected 3 times in a row, despite having excellent credit and references. Each rejection came with vague explanations that didn't make sense, but we both knew exactly what was happening behind the scenes. Then came the final ambush at Connor's office, where his father had apparently been waiting for the perfect moment to corner him. Your grandfather built this family empire from absolutely nothing. Robert's voice boomed through the glass-walled conference room where he had trapped Connor during what was supposed to be a normal workday. And you're throwing it all away for what exactly? A teacher who airs our family's dirty laundry in public and has no understanding of what our social position means? Connor stood his ground, his shoulders straight and his voice steady. Are you done with the guilt trip, Dad? Done? I'm just getting started. Robert's face was turning red with fury. I've frozen your trust fund completely, canceled every single one of your credit cards, and called every private school in the state to inform them about your precious fiancé's unprofessional behavior at family events. How long do you honestly think you'll last without Daddy's money propping up your lifestyle? He continued with cruel satisfaction. Is that all you think I am? Connor's voice was quiet but absolutely fierce. Just a trust fund? A walking bank account? Your personal puppet to control and manipulate? You're my son, my heir, the future of everything I've built, Robert shot back. No. Connor stepped closer to his father, his voice gaining power. I'm the man who's done absolutely everything you ever wanted for 28 years of my life. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect social circle, perfect behavior at every family function. I've spent nearly 3 decades being your shadow, your echo, your good little soldier who never questioned orders, he continued. But not anymore. I'm done being your puppet. Because of her? His father sneered with obvious contempt. This woman who destroyed your sister's reputation in front of our entire social circle? Victoria destroyed her own reputation, Connor replied firmly. Maya just exposed the truth that you all try so desperately hard to hide behind money and social status. The truth that money doesn't make you better people, he continued, his voice rising with conviction. It just makes you better at pretending to be something you're not. Robert's face turned an alarming shade of purple. How dare you speak to me like that? How dare I? How dare you? Connor slammed his hand down on the conference table with surprising force. You think you can buy and sell people's lives like they're commodities? Control them with money and threats like they're your personal possessions? Well, guess what, Dad? I quit. The job, the family name, the trust fund, all of it. I'm done. You'll regret this decision for the rest of your life. His father's voice turned ice cold and threatening. You have absolutely no idea what it's like out there in the real world without connections, without privilege, without the safety net our family provides. Maybe not, Connor replied with a laugh that actually sounded genuine. But I'd rather fail honestly as my own man than succeed as your puppet dancing on strings. I'll leave you nothing, Robert said with finality. Not a single penny of your inheritance. Connor laughed again, and this time it was filled with real joy. Keep it. Keep every last dollar. I don't want money that comes with strings attached to my soul and my freedom to choose my own life. His father went very still, staring at Connor as if seeing him for the first time. You really mean that, don't you? He said slowly. You would actually throw away generations of accumulated wealth, of social status, of everything our family has worked to build for this nobody. She's not nobody, Connor's voice was steady and sure. She's the woman who showed me what real strength actually looks like. Not buying people's silence or threatening their livelihoods when they don't do what you want, but standing up for truth, for love, for what's right even when it's difficult, he continued. Even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted. Love. His father spat the word like it tasted bitter. Love won't pay your bills, Connor. Love won't maintain the lifestyle you've grown accustomed to. Love won't give you the respect and influence that comes with our family name. No, but it'll let me look in the mirror every morning without hating what I see reflected back at me, Connor replied quietly. When's the last time you were able to do that, Dad? When's the last time you looked at yourself and felt proud of who you'd become? The question hit like a physical blow, and for a moment Robert Sterling Sr. looked every one of his years. Old, tired, and somehow diminished despite his expensive suit and all the power he wielded. You'll come crawling back, he finally said, but his voice lacked the conviction it had carried earlier. When you're tired of being nobody special, when you miss the life you were born for and trained to live. The life I was born for, Connor said as he opened the conference room door. Maybe I'm finally finding that life now, and it has nothing to do with money or status. Goodbye, Dad. I hope all that money and power keeps you warm at night when you're alone with your choices. As his father walked toward the door, he turned one last time with a final threat. This isn't over, Connor. Revenge is patient, and I am very, very patient. I'll make sure you both regret this. No, Dad, Connor said with quiet finality. It is over. You just don't realize it yet. When the door finally closed behind his father, Connor sank into a chair, his whole body shaking but with a genuine smile on his face. For the first time in his entire life, he was truly free. Completely, authentically free to be himself. The call came exactly 3 months after our final confrontation with his family. Connor's grandmother was dying of terminal cancer, and the news hit us both like a devastating blow. His father left a voicemail message that chilled my blood with its calculated cruelty. She's asking for you, Connor. Robert's voice was cold and manipulative. But she won't see you if you bring that woman with you. Your choice. Come alone to say goodbye to your grandmother, or don't come at all. Family only. Real family members who understand loyalty. I found Connor sitting in complete darkness in our small apartment, staring at his phone with tears streaming down his face. His grandmother had practically raised him while his parents traveled constantly for business deals and social obligations. She had been the one who taught him to read during long summer afternoons, who bandaged his scraped knees when he fell off his bicycle, who supported all his childhood dreams before his father systematically crushed them, one by one. "Go," I said softly, kneeling beside his chair. "Go see her while you still can." "He's using her." Connor's voice was raw with pain and anger. "He's using her death as a weapon against us, as one final manipulation." "I know he is," I replied gently. "But she's not the one manipulating you. She's dying, and she loves you." Then his father sent the final, devastating twist of the knife, a text message that made Connor's hands shake as he read it aloud. "By the way, she's changing her will tomorrow morning," he read, his voice breaking. "Either come alone and remain her heir, or bring your teacher and lose everything she ever wanted you to have, including the lake house where you spent every summer of your childhood. Your choice, Connor. Prove you're still part of this family, or prove that your little romance means more than family loyalty and your dying grandmother's last wish." The lake house where Connor had learned to swim in crystal clear water, where he had spent every magical summer with his grandmother away from his parents' constant pressure, where he had already planned to teach our future children to fish from the old wooden dock. His sanctuary, his refuge, his happiest childhood memories. "I can't," his voice broke completely as the weight of the impossible choice crushed down on him. "I can't choose between—" "Then don't go at all," his father's next message interrupted his anguish. "Prove to everyone that your little romance means more than family loyalty, more than your dying grandmother's last wish to see her grandson one final time." I watched Connor pace our small apartment like a trapped animal, completely torn between love and guilt, between his present happiness and his past. For a terrifying moment, I could see him wavering, could see the enormous weight of family obligation and childhood love crushing his hard-won resolve. That's when another voice cut through all the manipulation and emotional blackmail. Connor's mother was calling separately, and her voice sounded completely different, stronger, clearer, more determined than I had ever heard it before. "Connor, honey, there's something critically important you need to know," she said, and I could hear the strength in her voice. "Your father's lying to you about everything." "What?" Connor asked, confusion clear in his voice. "Your grandmother's been asking for both of you," his mother continued firmly. "She specifically wants to meet the woman who gave you the courage to finally stand up to him. The woman who reminds her of herself when she was young." "Mom?" Connor's voice was filled with shock. "I wasn't always this person, Connor." His mother's voice trembled with emotion. "Before I married your father, I was just a receptionist working at a small downtown firm. Working-class family, public school education, no social connections or inherited wealth. Your grandfather hired me to work in his office," she continued, her voice getting stronger. "That's how I met your father. He was just a young man then, not the controlling person he became." The revelation hung in the air like a bombshell, completely changing everything we thought we knew about Connor's family history. "Your father's family did exactly the same thing to me that they're doing to you and Maya now," she continued. "They tried to keep me away, called me a gold digger, threatened your father with disinheritance if he didn't find someone more suitable." "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" Connor asked, his voice filled with wonder and confusion. "Because I let them change me," his mother replied sadly. "I let them mold me into what they wanted me to become. Let them erase who I really was. I watched them try to do the same thing to you and Victoria, and I said nothing. But seeing you with Maya," her voice filled with something like hope, "it's like seeing myself 30 years ago, before I forgot who I was and what I believed in." Connor sat down heavily, the weight of this revelation hitting him like a physical blow. "Dad's threatening to cut me out of her will if I bring Maya to see her." "No, he's not," his mother said with surprising firmness. "I've already spoken directly to your grandmother's lawyer myself. She's leaving the lake house to you and Maya specifically, to both of you together. She says it's time for new memories to be made there," his mother continued, her voice warm with emotion. "Real memories, honest memories, the kind she and your grandfather made before all this wealth and status became more important than love." I heard Connor catch his breath in amazement and relief. "Your father doesn't know about the will yet," his mother continued conspiratorially. "He's at the hospital right now, probably planning his next move, his next manipulation to try to control your life. But I'm completely done letting him hurt our children," she said with steel in her voice. "Done watching him try to control love with money and threats, the way his father tried to control our love." "Mom," Connor started to say. "Bring Maya to the hospital right now," his mother interrupted with authority. I'll handle your father when he tries to interfere. It's time someone finally stood up to him, and it's going to be me." After the call ended, Connor and I sat in complete silence for several long moments, both of us trying to process what we had just learned. "All these years," Connor whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "She was just like you. She came from the same kind of background, faced the same prejudice, and she let them change her into someone else entirely. But she's not letting them do it anymore," I said, squeezing his hand tightly. "She's not going to let them do to us what they did to her." "And neither are we," Connor replied with growing conviction. We drove to the hospital together that evening, not knowing exactly what kind of confrontation we would face when we arrived, but knowing for the first time in months that we weren't facing it completely alone. Connor's mother was finally ready to fight alongside us. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft, rhythmic beeping of monitors when we finally arrived. Connor's grandmother Eleanor looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, but her eyes were still sharp and clear as ever when she saw us enter. Robert Sr. stood rigidly by the window, his back tense with barely controlled anger, while Connor's mother sat holding Eleanor's hand with protective tenderness. "There's my boy." Eleanor's voice was weak but filled with genuine warmth. "And this must be Maya. Come closer, dear. Let me see the woman who gave my grandson his spine back." Connor's father turned around slowly, his face thunderous with rage. "Mother, we discussed this situation." "No, Robert." Eleanor's soft voice somehow carried more authority than his loud demands ever had. "You discussed it. You demanded, you threatened, you tried to manipulate an old woman on her deathbed. Now it's my turn to speak, and you're going to listen." She patted the hospital bed gently, motioning for us to sit beside her. "Robert, look at them," she commanded. "Really look at them with your eyes open. What do you see when you look at this young couple?" "I see my son throwing away everything we've built for him," Robert replied coldly. "Everything our family has worked generations to achieve." "No," Eleanor shook her head with sad disappointment. "You see yourself 30 years ago when you fell desperately in love with a receptionist who made you laugh before your father nearly destroyed that love with the exact same threats you're using now." The color completely drained from Robert's face as his mother's words hit their target. "That was different," he said weakly, but his voice lacked conviction. "Was it different when your father called me a gold digger?" Connor's mother spoke up, her voice breaking with emotion. "Was it different when he threatened to disinherit you completely? When he tried to buy me away from you with job offers in other cities? And you fought for me," she continued, tears streaming down her face. "You chose love over money just like Connor is doing right now. When did we forget that, Robert? When did we become the very people we once fought against?" Eleanor reached out with her frail hand to grasp her son's arm. "I watched you change after your father died, Robert. Watched you try so desperately hard to become him that you forgot who you really were underneath all that inherited responsibility. I watched you do to Connor exactly what was done to you," she continued sadly. "The same pressure, the same threats, the same attempts to control love with money and fear. Robert's voice caught in his throat as the full weight of his mother's words sank in. "I wanted him to be strong, to be able to handle the responsibilities that come with our family name. He is strong." Eleanor smiled warmly at us, her eyes twinkling despite her illness. "Strong enough to choose love over money. Strong enough to choose authenticity over appearance. Strong enough to choose what's right even when it's difficult. Just like you were once before you let fear change you into someone I barely recognized," she added gently. "The lake house," Robert whispered, suddenly understanding something crucial. "I threatened him with the lake house just like father threatened me with it all those years ago." He sank heavily into the nearest chair, the crushing weight of realization making him look older than his years. "I've become him, haven't I? Everything I swore I would never be. Everything I once fought against." "Dad?" Connor's voice was gentle but firm. "It's not too late to change. It's never too late to remember who you really are underneath all the family expectations." Robert looked at his son for what seemed like the first time in years, really seeing him as an individual person rather than just an extension of the family legacy. Then he looked at me, and instead of seeing a threat to his family's social status, perhaps he saw a mirror of his own past and the love he had once fought for. "Maya," his voice cracked with emotion, "can you ever forgive me for what I've put you both through?" "That depends," I said softly, meeting his eyes directly. "Can you forgive yourself for becoming someone you never wanted to be?" Eleanor squeezed all our hands together with surprising strength, bringing us into a circle around her hospital bed. "Life's too short for pride, too precious for prejudice and fear," she said with the wisdom that comes from facing mortality. "Believe me, I know," she added, glancing meaningfully at the monitors beside her bed. I want to see this family whole again before I go. I want to know that my great-grandchildren will grow up knowing both love and heritage, both strength and compassion." Robert stood slowly, years of rigid pride and accumulated bitterness melting away like ice in the spring sun. He walked over to Connor and did something I had never seen before in all the time I'd known this family. He hugged his son with genuine emotion. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking completely. "So sorry for everything I've done, everything I've become." Then he turned to me with tears in his eyes. "Welcome to the family, Maya. Welcome to the real family, not the facade we've been hiding behind for so many years." Eleanor's smile lit up the entire room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Now that's the son I raised," she said with obvious pride. "The man who chose love over status, heart over wealth, authenticity over appearance." As we all gathered around her hospital bed, sharing stories and tears and genuine laughter for the first time in years, I realized something beautiful was happening. Sometimes it takes an ending to create a new beginning. Sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to remember what really matters in life. And sometimes, just sometimes, love really does conquer all, even generations of accumulated pride and prejudice. Eleanor passed away peacefully just 3 days later, but not before seeing her family truly reunited for the first time in decades. She died knowing that the cycle of control and manipulation that had defined their family for generations was finally broken. The lake house became our summer home, just as she had intended. It's where our children now learn to fish and swim in the same crystal-clear waters where Connor spent his happiest childhood summers. It's where they hear stories about their great-grandmother who taught their grandfather about the power of love, who taught their father about the importance of courage, and who in her final days taught us all about the healing power of forgiveness. The lake house holds new memories now, real ones, honest ones, filled with the kind of genuine love and authentic family connection that no amount of money could ever buy. And every summer when we sit on that old wooden dock watching our children play in the water, I remember the night when Connor chose love over everything else, and how that single brave choice changed not just our lives, but the entire future of his family. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money or property. It's the courage to break free from the patterns that have held your family prisoner and create something better for the generations that come after you.